right, hello everyone. You're listening to You Got It with Warrior Woman 91. All right, I'm very excited this week because we have a great guest, and I know you guys generally prefer the guest episodes on my podcast, so I'm bringing you another guest, for heaven's sakes. Here you are, another guest. So it's a good friend of mine, at Neontaster on Twitter, also known as Ben Shapiro's dad. Neontaster, welcome to the show.
Thanks. It's good to be here, finally. I mean, we've spoken about this for a little while, and I'm happy to finally be on.
I'm happy to have you, and I think my fans are going to be excited to have you, especially because everyone knows that I've become rather obsessed in the last 2 to 3 weeks with Minecraft, and so I'm back in the video game scene a little bit. And I thought you were a perfect person to have on to discuss my newfound addiction and how I should be dealing with it properly. So,
I mean, it's funny you say that because, like, I'm just kind of getting back into it myself after a little bit of a break. Oh my God, I'm just going to start with self-promotion. I feel so skeevy. I started a Patreon recently, finally, like after a long time people bugged me about it and were like, are you going to do this or not? And so at some point I started it a few months ago and just let it like stew and didn't really promote it. And I got a little bit of money saved up in there, and I finally went on and I bought some equipment to do better streams now. And so I can go back to gaming. So I'm kind of in the same mentality. Like I'm kind of excited to jump back into it.
Yeah, I'm really wanting to start a Twitch just so that people can actually gauge how much I've been playing Minecraft. It's not even funny. I get home from work and I do all my chores. Like, I'm very diligent about this. All my work is done, all the chores are done, everything's done, and then I will log 3, 4, 5 hours. And I did this last night. At 6 o'clock, I was like, okay, I'm gonna get off. At 7 o'clock, I'm gonna get off. And then I finally got off, and it's 8:10, and I'm like, okay, all right, this is a thing now. So,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Just the hours. It's just like a sinkhole for your time.
It really is. Especially Minecraft
I
specifically is just, you're constantly on there, and it's instant gratification, but also there's so much more I could have just done. There's just so much more. So I don't think you and I haven't really talked too much in a while, so this is as much fun for me to catch up with you as anyone else. The main thing I want to talk to you, of course, I want to talk to you about video games, obviously, but I did want to get your take on social media before we jump into the video games thing. What is your take on social media in general? It seems like there is this conflict going on right now between big tech and the individual creators that have like YouTube channels or fitness blogs or whatever. And they're the ones trying to make a living as individuals, and then the big tech companies are kind of coming in and saying, no, this is our space. So do you think this will end up being taken over by one or the other, or do you think platforms will end up kind of... I guess let's just focus on the first question. Do you think like big tech will end up pushing out all the individual content creators, or do you think it'll end up splintering?
That's a good question. It's a really weird situation. Like, I feel like in a few decades, when historians and like society look back at this period, this is going to be a huge thing. I mean, maybe not, like Gutenberg printing press big, but like this idea that in almost no time at all, on a historical scale, literally no time at all, we went from a monopoly of like public voice and public speaking, whether or not it's like government officials or legacy media, to a place where everybody has a voice that can be just as big, and you can have audiences of millions, and you're not part of any kind of structure. It's just you saying what you want to say, and that has lots of benefits, but it's presented a lot of difficulty, and especially again when you throw in the tech companies, how it's slowly becoming monopolized and how ubiquitous it is. And yeah, you're creating a bit of a problem. You're creating a centralization of power in the way that governments used to have it in the hands of these private companies. Because, the bottleneck used to be the government, or the government-run media, and there was, that was, and so, like the American Constitution, the whole point of it is to prevent the government from becoming sort of monopolizing freedom and monopolizing speech. And that's what our system of law is built towards, and it's not really ready to deal with what's going on right now, which is sort of a similar situation, except it's in the private sector.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we don't have right now. We don't have the tools to deal with this. I keep going back to the writer's strike, the famous writer's strike that happened years ago. The reason for that strike was because writers were being stiffed for royalties that were related to digital streamings or digital platforms, because the whole Writers Guild contract was written before that stuff existed. Mm-hmm. And so the company said, look, the contract doesn't say you get money from streamings, but doesn't specifically say the word streaming or the word digital, so we can just not pay you for that. Mm-hmm. And so they had to, and eventually there was this realization that, the world changed after we wrote this, and new avenues of revenue came into existence, and we got to, revise our language. Same thing here. Facebook is not like the electrical company or the water company, but it's also not just a restaurant. There is some new category, because people make money, people make careers. I owe a big portion of my professional life to Twitter. Mm-hmm. And I'm not even close to someone who owes their entire professional life, their entire income, and their entire potential for growth off of social media platforms. In theory, Google, three people, as few as three people can erase you from the commercial sector. Google erases you from Google, and Facebook bans you from Facebook, and YouTube bans you from YouTube, and that's it. You can't make digital money anymore. Mm-hmm. And so something will have to happen. I really hope it's not some kind of bizarre government regulation that determines that there needs to be some kind of neutrality in who you give your platforms to. I mean, it's a problem.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
I mean, that is that's the thing that concerns me the most, really, is that I think even the left is starting to recognize that this is a problem, because just average people, makeup channels on YouTube, for example, or I noticed Shawn Johnson, the gymnast, has been complaining for the past couple months that her comments have been taken away, or there's just so many different people that you would think are pretty neutral, generic celebrity type people, or even, just they're not political in any way. And they're trying to put out content on YouTube, yet they're being demonetized, or they're having, features disabled or whatever. And so I'm concerned that one day the left will wake up to this and say, oh, this is a problem. These people have too much power. The government definitely needs to come in and make it impossible then for anybody to do anything on here. That's my biggest concern. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, over the past year or two, I actually changed my mind on a lot of things, like the death penalty, for example. I switched from being pro-death penalty to being anti-death penalty for one reason. Mm-hmm. Not because I think it's immoral. It's because I think the government is not infallible. In fact, I think the government is really bad at everything. Mm-hmm. And so, that's why I think that opposition to the death penalty should be something conservative support from a small government stance. Forget for a second morality and Christianity and the sanctity of life and whether or not the state has the right to deny someone their life. Forget that for a second. Just let's focus on the fact that the government can't even handle your taxes properly or fix potholes in the road. You want them to have control over whether or not somebody gets executed? That's strange. And so in the same way, the government is the last entity I want to come into this already messed up situation and say, okay, here's how we're going to fix it. That's really bad. My only hope is that the fear of that happening might drive initiative from within tech to do better. because the alternative will be some kind of bizarre government agency that has to regulate social media platforms, and nobody wants that. I mean, certainly not, like Twitter. The problem is it's all very opaque. Like you said, people are like, I'm getting demonetized, I'm getting shadow banned, and these companies say, we're not doing it, but there's proof that they are, and there's like nobody to talk to. Like YouTube, if you're a small-time creator, and YouTube decides to delete your video, there's a very limited avenue of things that you can do. You write to their whatever, you file a grievance, and they can or they may or may not explain why they made their decision, and their decision may or may not make any kind of sense, and that's that. And yeah, like people say, yes, they're a private company, but the problem is when there is no transparency and when there's no seeming consistency to how they moderate their platforms. That's where you start to get, because again, bias, whatever. Let's assume for a second that there is no bias. I mean, systematically.
Yeah.
Let's assume for a second that Twitter. I'll be kind. Let's say that there is no corporate understanding in Twitter that they are going to suppress conservative opinions more than they will liberal opinions. The problem is when moderation is just like people, and there's no like structure, like if the person who reads a tweet that's been reported looks at it and decides that it's transphobic because that's how they feel, and they think that you deserve to be banned, your appeal to that doesn't go like above their head into some kind of accountability structure. There's moderators, and if the moderators decide that something violates their rules, then that thing gets banned. And they kind of painted themselves into a corner in a few cases with like Farrakhan, and there was another thing that I'm blanking on right now where they got to like keep changing their minds and saying like, well, it actually did violate it. Actually, YouTube did that with Crowder, where they said like, no, we'll remonetize if he deletes the link, and then people got mad about that, and they said, no, what we meant was actually this, and no, what we meant is actually that. Like they got caught out because they work in such an opaque way, and so one time they get caught in such a high-profile thing, and then it sort of highlights how how weirdly scatterbrained this process is.
Yeah, I mean, I think you make a great point about how, I mean, there's no oversight. It's not necessarily for me. I am torn on this because I don't want any government involvement in really anything. However, just because you're a private business doesn't mean you can go around like messing with people on that level. Like this would not be acceptable in any other industry, but because this is kind of the brand new industry of the century or whatever, it's the Wild West still, even though it's not as fun as it was in the beginning. But and there's nobody to appeal to. There's nobody to say, hey, this person is treating me badly. They're pulling down my videos and they're not giving me any reasons or whatever it happens to be. It's very frustrating. And so I guess my other question is, do you think that specifically with YouTube, do you think that other platforms will end up becoming more popular if they adopt? I think this was Crowder. I think Crowder made the point that YouTube was the only one that was offering people the ability to get paid, which is why they don't have any competitors right now or any serious competitors. But do you think if other people adopt that kind of model where we're going to give you a portion of how much money is made off this video, if those kinds of platforms start springing up, do you think YouTube will start to be taken down a peg?
I mean, we'll eventually see. And like it's happened in the past. Like it's funny. Like I remember when MySpace was going to be around forever. Mm-hmm. Like everybody says this now about, and and I remember when Facebook is like old people social network. First of all, the fact that there are social networks out now that are sort of have become famously platforms for elderly people is really an interesting evolution. It just shows you that we're in a new, we've gone into a new stage that we weren't in, I don't know, even 5 years ago. We're almost transitioning to I don't know, I got to think about it a little more, but generation 3 or generation 4 of internet usage. And there were attempts to compete with YouTube. There was, I can't remember the name of the site, but there was a site that was we're gonna be creator oriented, and we have a pay structure that's better than YouTube's, and we're not gonna fuck around with you like YouTube does or whatever. And it failed after some time. But the one right now that I think YouTube has the most to be concerned about is Twitch, which we were chit-chatting about before we went live. And Twitch has a good creator relationship model. And they take care of their people, and there are a lot of ways to directly. I think they got this on YouTube too, but I don't I think you got to be a big shot to qualify for this stuff. And on Twitch, not so much. Once you become a Twitch partner, which again is not super difficult to do, then you can start soliciting bits from people directly on your stream, and so it's no longer ad revenue, which works differently, and you got to negotiate. There are these flat rates. Somebody gives you $5, Twitch gets, I don't know, whatever X amount of an X percent of it, but it's mostly for you. And yeah, I mean, the more this problem persists, the more likely it is that competitors are going to try to fill this niche. The problem is, because it's political, that's the problem with Gab or Parler, social media platforms that say we're not censoring anything because other people censor, and that's their selling point. The problem with that is it becomes most attractive to people whose content is unacceptable everywhere else.
Yeah.
And so then immediately that becomes your primary user base, and then you're already pigeonholed into a bad place to go.
Especially Gab, particularly, because I hear their name and all I think of is the green frog.
Yeah, I mean, and that was exactly what happened with Gab. Gab immediately became the haven for people whose content was too sort of aggressively right-wing for Twitter. And kind of in the same, it's funny because 4chan, this is all tied into Gamergate, but let's not talk about that. But the thing is, there was this migration of edginess from places like 4chan to Twitter, and then from Twitter now then to places like Gab or sometimes Reddit, because it's like the deadbeat friend who eventually just gets kicked out of every house they couch surf on, and they gotta drift from place to place. And so you need there to be more of a non-political need for an alternative to YouTube. And I think that might start to happen because, again, we always say eventually the people who push for these moderation policies always get burned by that fire. They always their stuff gets demonetized after the adpocalypse, when all of these videos about LGBT issues, how are trans teens supposed to deal with their transition during their teen years, all of a sudden advertisers were putting that on the list of things they didn't want to advertise on. And the people who push for content moderation of that nature, of a political nature, never think they're going to be on the losing side of it, and they're always wrong. Always.
That's so true. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, you go.
Oh, I just wanted to move on to video games a little bit because I think I agree with all of your points on social media, or at least the majority of them. I just think I guess I just fear the government coming in and tampering with things and really, because the thing that I love about YouTube and YouTube-like platforms is it gives people like me the ability to put out content, whereas 20, 30 years ago, I would have had to have gone through and got a license and try to get a radio show or something. And I don't have to do that. I can just do things in my house and be my own boss essentially on that level. So, but I do want to move on to video games because that's really the whole reason I brought you on. Again, we were
so happy. By the way, I'm so happy that you brought me on specifically not for politics. That's very heartening.
Well, I'm really trying to do non-political episodes. I know my last episode was political, and there's just I kind of made my name in politics, and now I'm done with it for at least for the near future.
The thing we were discussing right now is like a weird, like in an intersection of like tech and politics,
right?
So it's not like we were talking about like a house race,
Right. Yeah. I mean, the thing, I feel like the social media thing is relevant to gamers because so much of gaming has to do with YouTube and Twitch and stuff, because basically what I've been doing is I think Minecraft. So Minecraft is my new obsession. I know we were talking about this off the air, but Minecraft is my new obsession. And for about 2 or 3 weeks, I've just been playing it nonstop, and it's becoming a problem. I need help, people. I need someone to get me off this game. But I went from, oh my gosh, survivor mode is so hard and I hate it, to now that's like the only thing I play. I don't even play creator mode right now. But the whole community of video games is you play the game and then you get stuck, and then you go to YouTube or you go to Twitch or you go to somewhere else and you find out how somebody else overcame that part of the game. And so there is this certain sense of community with video games. It's not, I don't feel like it's this individualist thing anymore. So right around the same time I started playing Minecraft, PewDiePie started playing Minecraft. I don't know what was in both of our heads to start playing. So I've been now obsessing over his Minecraft videos. So I don't know, what is your take on the kind of the video game community and how it relates to YouTube and Twitch and all of that?
Well, so it's true that this social media thing is very relevant to gaming, because the social aspect of gaming can only exist that way. I mean, like, think about like TV fandoms, okay? Like Game of Thrones, essentially, technically doesn't need social media in order to be popular. It's on TV, and it's like well advertised on the streets and on other things and on, I don't know, whatever. And so, if Twitter stopped, if Twitter went away midway through the last season of Game of Thrones, the ratings wouldn't have gone down. Video gaming only exists in that sphere of like sort of social media, because I mean Twitch can also be considered social media, certainly. And so I mean now a little bit, like you could go on like ESPN4 or whatever and watch like esports tournaments, but that only happened because it became popular in this kind of sphere. And you're right, the social aspect of gaming, when I started streaming on Twitch, which was like a couple of years ago, I didn't know if I was going to enjoy it. I was always I didn't like multiplayer. I was always like a single player guy, and I wasn't really a guy who watched video game streams. I sort of learned to love it. But the thing that I discovered was exactly the thing that you spoke about right now. You get stuck. You have people who help you. It brought me back to like childhood, where like the lore of games was a thing that you like discuss with your friends on the schoolyard, and I figured out how to do this fatality in Mortal Kombat back when there was no like go on the internet and just find all the moves. And so much like you in Minecraft, I was playing The Binding of Isaac on PlayStation, and that's a game that has like dozens and dozens of different kind of power-ups and items, and you can stack them in interesting ways, and there's bits of lore to the game, strategic bits of lore. If you see this, there's a better chance of this happening, and if you have this item, you're better off doing this than that. And when I was playing it, I got a lot of that kind of good advice, and it was so much fun. That whole idea of like, oh, I learned a new trick, and watching people play Breath of the Wild when it first came out, when it was new, and discovering like, oh, if you mix these things, you can make this kind of potion, and if you go to this place, you can find this thing. Love that. Because again, in the age of the internet, nothing's a mystery anymore. That's why Endgame, I think, like Infinity War and Endgame were so popular. Nothing's a mystery anymore. People like mystery, and discovery is a fun thing to do together. And so yeah, like I'm thrilled to get back into it. I hope that, because I'm back with scary games. I can play a scary game if there's somebody else in the room with me, but like by myself I can. But I think maybe if I have like a good chat going of people with me, that might like help me through it. And so yeah, there's like an added. There's almost like an added benefit to it where you get a different experience. It's because I can play Horizon Zero Dawn by myself for hours, or I can play it with people and talk about it. And like one of the games I was playing on PlayStation 4, Nier Automata, had this moment that like blew my mind, and it happened live on stream, and you could go back and listen to this moment where my mind gets blown. And it's just great. And like people who knew the game and knew that was going to happen were like sitting there eager, kind of like Red Wedding spoiler kind of thing. And they had a great time like watching me experience it, and I had a great time like experiencing it with other people. So way better. Like I'm sure it would have been fun if that had happened to me alone in my room, but it would not be that fun.
So this is it's really selling me on Twitch, because I really want to start doing Twitch streams. When I was a kid, my brother and we went through like the first part of our childhood being anti-video games, and then all of a sudden Dad brought home the old NES, and oh my gosh, it was this new world. And we used to play, like we would sit next to each other, and whoever wasn't playing would actually sit there and watch, and we would like yell at the screen and like get involved in it. And it's almost like a sport when you have multiple people there. It's almost like a sport where you cheer, or you're like, do this or do that, or you're stupid or whatever. And so now I want to bring that back, and I want to have a Twitch stream. I want people to yell at me for doing something dumb on the game or whatever, because it's just so much fun. But
yeah, and even I don't get a ton of viewers. I mean, I think if I start doing it regular, like I think that regular schedules is the thing that gets you more viewers. I've been doing it just like off the cuff, and so I think at the most I've had like maybe 80 people, which is again a lot, but not. You go to one of these like bigger streamers and they got like hundreds and thousands of people. But you're right, like that's why I love watching speed runners try to break world records. Is an amazing thing to watch on Twitch, because when it happens, it's this moment of elation. There's a streamer that I love, Mitch Flowerpower, who's like the number one Super Mario Brothers 3 player in the world.
Oh my gosh.
And I watched him break a couple of like world records in an insane fashion. He invented this trick that like cut the world record thing, and it was really hard to do, and it took like days and days. Like I watched him every night for hours try to do this trick and fail and fail and fail and fail. And then it happened, and he broke that record, and it was like I was here like at 1 a.m. like just cheering at an empty room because I was so excited. It's just great. It's just a great experience.
So I do want to talk to you about old video games, because that's kind of my specialty. I love the old Marios, which you just brought up. I love the old like Kirby's Adventure games. What else? So this is the other reason I wanted to bring you on, because I thought you might get a few obscure references, and if you don't get it, I will be very disappointed. So
okay, well, hold on. So let's preface this for a second.
Okay.
I'm 36. How old are you?
28.
Okay, so I'm a little older than you,
yeah.
But I did not grow up in the U.S. I had a slightly different experience with video games. We can get into that as we talk about this. But there is a chance that some of the things that were more popular here, I might have missed.
Okay.
We'll see. Let's see.
I think if you don't get it, it's not that big of a deal because literally, I feel like nobody has heard of this game. But I thought you of all my friends probably has. But my favorite game as a kid was Bionic Commando, which was basically. Did you hear of it?
Yes.
Aha! Yes.
I gotta Google this because the name definitely sounds familiar. So I gotta look it up.
It's basically what if World War II was in the 80s and Hitler is reincarnated and all this stuff. It's
the original. I've definitely heard this name. That's the 100%. What was it on?
It was
it's on original NES.
Yeah.
I see.
Yep.
A Capcom. Let me see. Here we go.
Yeah, it's actually the second one. The first one was just Commando, and the second one was Bionic Commando.
Gotcha.
But that...
Yes, I'm sure I've seen this, at a friend's house or something like that. Definitely. I'm looking at the little side-scrolly images of him, swinging on these things.
Yes.
Absolutely. I've absolutely seen this.
Yes. So that game is the best example of how I like to play video games because it's one of those games, and also Mario, the first Super Mario, where you can't save. So there's just something that is so fulfilling when you play video games or a video game for X amount of hours, and it's so exhausting, and you can't save, and you have to keep going, and then you finally win the whole thing. It's that sense of accomplishment that I just love, and I miss that sometimes in video games because now you can save it, but and that's probably more healthy because then you can take a break from it. But sometimes I will just go back and I will play the first Super Mario, which I have played all the way to the end, or I will play Bionic Commando all the way to the end, and I'll just be like, I broke my own record.
Contra is the most classic example I can think of. Again, I had Mario, and I also had the Game Boy version of Mario, which I also managed to beat as a kid. But when you were talking about this, and I said Binding of Isaac, what you need, you're describing, there is a category of game now that kind of fulfills that kind of scratches that itch. Mm-hmm. They're called roguelikes.
Okay.
There was a game called Rogue, and these are all clones of the game Rogue. Mm-hmm. Binding of Isaac, the point of these games is you can't save. A death is a death forever. But the thing about Binding of Isaac is you play it until the end, and then after you beat it 5 times, all of a sudden more stages unlock, and so now the game you play is longer. Mm-hmm. And every time you play it, you get more unlockables. And if you beat enemies in certain ways, you get more unlockables, and that unlocks more things in it. And so, at this point in Binding of Isaac, where I'm not even I'm probably 40% done with it, and I put in 500 or 600 hours, ridiculous amounts of time playing it. And now at this point, my game is very long, and there's paths. At certain points, I can choose to go down this set of rooms rather than that set of rooms. But if you die, that's it. You got to start from the beginning again. Mm-hmm. And so you should probably look into that. You should probably get yourself a good roguelike.
Yeah, it's just, there's something about, because it's so aggravating when you play one of those games and you do die, because you're like, I just wasted all these hours doing it, and then 30 seconds later you're playing it again because you think that you're going to beat it. That's kind of the way Minecraft is also. You die and you lose all your pieces you were carrying, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I wasted so much time. But it's so fulfilling when you finally, after how many times of trying, you finally go all the way to the end, and then you just feel like a boss. It's just a wonderful feeling.
Yeah. I haven't had that sense of fulfillment in a while. One game I just broke out because I just hooked up my Xbox 360 again because I'm going to be able to stream from it now because I got a capture card. Mm-hmm. And one of my favorite games for that is Vanquish, sort of an super underrated game. And beating the final boss of that game, which took me, I think, 100 tries or something like that, was one of the biggest, like, I hadn't had, like, a video game thrill like that since I was a kid, because it was so hard, and it really took, like, everything I had, every, like, little bit of effort.
Yeah.
And so it was it was so rewarding to beat it finally. So yeah, I totally get that, and it's like it's like being a drug addict. Like, you're always chasing that unicorn. You always want to feel that good about beating a game again.
Exactly. So I did want to kind of change. We're still in the video games topic, but I did kind of want to change the subject a little bit to. There's a lot of people that say that video games are unhealthy for you or bad for you, or they encourage violent behavior or whatnot. What is your take on that?
I think that, much like almost everything else, video games are what you make of them, and they are as good or as bad as like the context that they are in. For instance, if you're if you're a parent and you have kids, so the things that they derive from video games are very dependent on, like, which ones you let them play, how you let them play them, how you discuss them with them, etc. And again, like, lots of people can have a burger or can go out and drink on the weekends and handle it perfectly fine, and other people are morbidly obese or alcoholic, and those things are detrimental to them, like, in a disproportionate way than they are for people who are, like, able to control those urges. And so the way I look at it is, I think that video games, if you're prone to certain kinds of, like, violent behavior or bad behavior, video games can help accentuate that. Because, or like, if you're really like a misogynist troll or like a racist guy or whatever, yelling at people from behind like a digital wall is something that lets you, like, you can let loose more. Like, you're not apt to behave like that if somebody's standing in front of you. And if you're the kind of person who's planning a school shooting or a terrorist attack, you can kind of get ideas from it or something like that. But on that same level, they say that Bin Laden sort of was inspired. One of his inspirations for 9/11 was watching Independence Day and seeing the White House blow up, and that it sort of imagined this happening for real, like the power of positive thinking. Like, imagined it happening, and so does that mean that movie is now, like, does that reflect negatively on a movie where aliens invade Earth? I don't think so. And on the same level, I don't think that a game that millions of people play, because that's the thing that you got to remember. You know how they said that about Grand Theft Auto, right? Oh, it glorifies violence and it encourages violence because it makes violence cool. San Andreas was the one that caused all the hoopla. That's, by the way, one of the greatest games ever made, I think, GTA San Andreas. And it's also one of the most important games because of all of this controversy with the sex and the violence and the crime. And that game sold insane numbers. And there was, like, one incident on Long Island somewhere many years ago where kids, like, went on, like, a car stealing spree, and when they caught them, they said they were inspired by Grand Theft Auto. But, like, nothing happened. Like, you would think that if there was some connection, like fentanyl, okay? This is a weird, like, comparison. But, like, fentanyl, which is, like, essentially poison, like, you can show direct causal links between the increase of fentanyl coming into this country and the rate of opiate-related deaths. That's easy. There's more fentanyl, more people die of an opioid overdose. Nobody can show any kind of, like, statistical similarity between, like, the popularity of certain games and, like, increases in violent tendencies or violent behavior. There's anecdotal cases, which happens all the time. Like I said, fucking John Hinckley tried to shoot Reagan because of Taxi Driver, and what's his name killed John Lennon because of Catcher in the Rye. Media inspires crazy people to do crazy things. That's always been true.
I think
it's always been true.
Yeah, I think you make a lot of good points there, and that's pretty much my take on it, because a bad person didn't become bad because they went and saw The Dark Knight Rises and they watched The Joker, and they all of a sudden he was a good person before he went in that movie theater and saw that movie, and then he saw the Joker blow up that hospital and immediately he became a bad person. I don't think that you can make that argument when it comes, and it was an argument that I fell for many years, because when I think I was a teenager and I heard about what happened in The Dark Knight Rises, and I thought, oh my gosh, Batman must be bad. I mean, I must not be able to go and see those movies. And so I never watched them because I thought, oh, they inspire school shootings, because I was just, a little kid and I didn't know any better. And then I became an adult and I was like, well, wait a minute. I watched this movie and it's actually really, really good. And I didn't go out and shoot up a theater. So, I mean, it's just...
And by the way, there's lots of people who say that Batman is a fascist, and meaning, like, forget for a second, like, Batman, the actual person. I'm saying, like, the story of Batman, the idea of Batman is fascist and violent and vigilante and, like, no respect for authority. But then other people draw, like, real, like, inspiration for, like, justice and for not killing people, and for, it's what you make of it. Mm-hmm. It's what you make of it. If Batman is your ideal to be a good person, then, and that's what I'm saying, like, the goal is to be a better person, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you end up being a better person because of it, then you can't argue that it is, like, objectively negative.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even just Batman necessarily, but if there's a lot, like, oh my gosh, we could do an entire podcast on The Last Jedi, but there's
I did two episodes of my podcast about it.
Oh boy. I just there was somebody online, I think, his name is Mahler is his YouTube channel, and he I think it was him that was talking about how Luke Skywalker used to be this kind of example of hope, and kind of like Mark Hamill used to do, like, rounds at cancer hospitals and so on and so forth, because people really looked up to this character and it meant a lot to them. And that's why a lot of people were very disappointed with The Last Jedi, because Luke Skywalker was not that Luke Skywalker in that movie. So, I mean, it's kind of like Batman is like that. And there's a lot of characters that are like that, but they do, Luke Skywalker chopped off his father's hand in one of the movies. So, like, is he now bad? Is he going to cause people to go out and chop off their father's hands with laser swords? I mean, it gets a little bit ridiculous to think that these characters and these things like video games and movies, they themselves are tools. They're not the actual good or bad person. The bad person is going to take whatever tool it is and use it in a bad way, or the good person is going to take the tool and use it in a good way, is basically how I understand it.
Yeah, and there's that's, I don't know what else there is to say about it. I guess technically there's this idea of, like, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? Technically, if you take away all violent video games, you might be able to show a measurable reduction in violent tendencies, but what else are you removing from society? Mm-hmm. Louis C.K., I know he's super canceled now, but he had a really good point about, like, not hitting your kids. He said, a lot of parents who hit their kids, their excuse for it is, I hit him and he never did the bad thing again. And Louis C.K. says, yeah, but what else have you done to him on top of that? Mm-hmm. Like, what other damage have you caused in the process of teaching him not to do this bad thing? And so, in the same way that dismantling capitalism will definitely help slow, like, air pollution and climate change stuff, but, like, it'll also ruin society.
Yeah.
That's the point. Like, and so there's overreacting, and then there's like taking away violent video games because a fraction of the people exposed to them do sort of I don't know what you want to call it, like societally unacceptable things, which is a really weird euphemism for like murdering people. But because I'm saying, like, if violent video games make you a jerk, but you're like still law-abiding and stuff or whatever, I don't think that's society's job to regulate video games. They have a tendency to make people like not nice. Mm-hmm. But if violent video games make you a rapist, then yeah, absolutely, society has some kind of role in like preventing them from getting to you. Mm-hmm. But it's so fractional. It's so small. I mean, they're so popular now. And again, like we were talking about social networks for old people, as time goes on, more and more of society is made up of people who grew up in a world with video games, mm-hmm. and who played them as kids. There's this great meme, and it's like a side-by-side, and one of them is like the one side is like it says something like 2019. Oh, look, I found a picture of your grandma when she was a kid, and it's like an oldie time, like 1920s black and white photo. And then on the other side, it says like, 2080. Oh, look, I found a picture of grandma when she was a little girl, and it's this like thought in a bikini doing an Instagram selfie with a tramp stamp. And so, like, we're evolving into that point, like where, like the president in like 30 years, the president will like be someone who doesn't know what 9/11 was, but knew what memes were from like age 4. Mm-hmm. Like, it's so weird. Like, things changed so drastically. Our generation witnessed one of the quickest changes in how society functions. Like, the generation before us had like giant wars and stuff, mm-hmm. but something about the information age smashing us in the face out of nowhere, mm-hmm. and how different the world is now. Like, when we were kids, when I was a kid, because I think my first experiences with the internet were around like 96 or something like that. Mm-hmm. The thinking back then about all of the things that are in my life now that couldn't happen because the ways in which they happened didn't exist back then. It's like, I don't know, 100%. Like, there's almost nothing that I'm interested in or do, or people that I know, or life experiences that I have that have not passed through the internet. That's a kind of a weird thing.
It is.
And yeah, like, we don't know how people lived without it.
Yeah. I mean, I used to live without it when I was really young. I mean, we had very limited internet, and it wasn't the thing that was at the forefront. Now it's just like, what would I do if I couldn't Google this thing? I was thinking about it the other day. What would I do if I couldn't Google how to mix these certain spices together to make my chicken? I might actually have to ask my mother. It's just stuff.
Yeah, like my dad. You're absolutely right. Like my dad, when my grandmother died, my dad's mom, mm-hmm. He and my aunt, his sister, like, went through all of her cookbooks and took out all the recipes, and like my dad had all of her like special recipes in these like foldy little papers, and like that, none of that is true anymore. I mean, even if you do that now, it's all like digital copy. Mm-hmm. But you're right. You're talking like vocational things. Like, I planned vacations. I was in Japan in December/January, and it was all Google Maps. I went on Twitter and I asked people, where should I go? I was like, hey, I'm in Kyoto. Somebody tell me what temple to go see today. Mm-hmm. And my dad and I just went to wherever people suggested. Like, that was, I don't know, like, it's funny. Like, I just think about it sometimes. Like, once in a while it kind of hits me. You have this like moment where you step outside yourself and you're like, how crazy is the world now?
It's so true. So I do have to kind of wrap up this show, but the number one question that people wanted me to ask you, and this will be the bonus question at the end of the episode, is what's Yoko really like?
Well, that this is such a bad day to ask me. I'm so mad at her. I'm so mad at her today. She's been very menacey lately. She's been destroying things and being a little bit unruly. But I think it's partly because it's been so hot here that I can't really, like, play with her outside a lot. Mm-hmm. So she's getting kind of stir crazy. But she's the kind of dog that will, like, run around in the sun until she drops down and dies. So I gotta be the responsible adult. I take her to the dog park, and all the other dogs are like chilling out in the shade because they cannot go in the sun, and she's like running around in circles like crazy. She has no sense of like, I'm gonna die if I keep doing this.
That's awesome. It sounds like she's does she have like, maybe this is a dumb question, but do dogs go through like adolescence at all?
I think they do. I believe they do. I don't know what the age range for it is, and she has gone she has had like better and worse times. I don't know what the developmental sort of logic is behind it. I also like recently like rearranged my apartment, and she was a little. She was very weirded out by it initially because I had like a pen for her, mm-hmm. like a permanent like area that I could have like penned her off in, and she's proven herself to be mature enough maybe to not need it, and so, but when I changed that around, she like did not know how to handle it for like 3 days. She was like super weirded out by it.
My cats reacted that way when I moved. When they didn't have any furniture in the house, it was just like, oh my gosh, the world is ending. And they're both female, so I wonder if it's a female thing with animals that when things are out of place or things are drastically changed, that they get kind of weirded out by it.
Yeah, I think they're very, and she's a creature of habit. If we walk out into the hallway, there's like a long hallway between my apartment and the elevator, and if there's something in it that isn't usually there, like a shopping cart or an umbrella, she kind of tenses up. Mm-hmm. And like wants to go investigate it. It's a new thing in her environment. I think it's very endearing. Like I find it very cute. Mm-hmm. And here now she's starting to attack me. I think she gets sort of weirded out about is when I'm on the phone like this. I'm just speaking loudly and gesticulating and like walking around my apartment. She's like, "What the fuck is he doing?" And so she kind of gets, after a while, she thinks I'm like trying to rile her up. So she tries to like bite me and jump on me, and I'm like on a conference call at work, being assaulted. So yeah, but so. I don't know. I said on Twitter, I was half joking when I said that, like, I spend 50% of my time mad at her, mm-hmm. And 50% like super, super happy. But you know, even the mad times, because you know, like people get pissed at their kids. Like people's kids get really difficult, and you have a day where you're just like, oh, God damn you! Like, what? You don't not love them when that happens.
Oh yes, oh my gosh, my cats. Poppy is the one that so for the two people that don't know, I have two cats. Their names are Poppy and Ace, and Poppy is my orange one, orange female, hard to find, and she is a monster. She destroys curtains. She eats things. She keeps me up at night. They both cry at night when they want to be let out. It's very frustrating, but I totally understand what you're saying. Like, I wouldn't give them up for anything, and like I would repay the $3,000 I've invested in medical bills for them. I would do it all over again, but they drive me crazy, and I totally understand it.
There you go, and even in the times when I'm pissed off, like I understand that. Like I say to myself, like I'm so mad at you right now, and I don't know what I'm gonna do, but it's fine because I know that like last week everything was great, so it's not.
It's the
all right, stop attacking me. Ow, ow.
It's the trials and tribulations of being a pet owner, especially of female animals that are very ornery. All right, so I'm gonna wrap up the show. Yoko's like, it's time to be done now. So,
exactly.
Thank you so much, Neontaster, for joining me.
Thank you. We can do this again. This was very fun. I feel like we could have just continued blabbing for a long time.
I feel like it as well. I feel like we could have done a Joe Rogan style 6-hour show, and then like it just could have kept going. But I think people need to. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, so the podcast that I was doing and going to start doing again was just me by myself, but I really want to start, like, bringing people on, and yeah, like that, we could totally just do like a quid pro quo kind of thing.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'm always down to do a show. So, people need to look out for Neontaster's upcoming podcast, and also hopefully my Twitch channel, which we'll see how long that takes me to get going. But the show is this is going to break the record. This is the longest episode I've ever had. So you guys better listen to every single minute of it, because it was very important, talking about the most important subjects of video games and all the rest of it. So again, thank you, Neontaster, for coming on, and I will talk to you guys on the next episode.